Your 1965 quarters could weigh 5 grams, 5.67 grams, or 6.25 grams, each with completely different values, even ranging up to $7,000. So let's start with the 1965 quarter that weighs only 5 grams. It was a dark night, as nights usually are, and I was in the middle of studying the case files for the 1965 quarter. I said I was studying... 1965 quarter, come in. Thanks for coming. Didn't really have a choice, did I? No, I guess not. Please, sit. Here, put this on. Now, I have reason to suspect that you are not actually a 1965 quarter, but you are indeed a nickel! What proof do you have? Well, for starters, quarters are supposed to weigh 5.67 grams, but you only weigh 5.0 grams, and that is exactly what a nickel weighs. So, I'm an old and worn down coin. Look, all my edges are so worn down you can't even see the full design. See, that just proves my point even more that you're a nickel. Because you started out looking like this, just a blank coin, also called a planchet. So you, a nickel planchet, somehow got struck with the quarter design. And we all know that nickels are smaller than quarters. That's why the full design can't fit on fake quarters like you. Well, what are you gonna do? Throw me in the trash? No. You see, we already know about this error that you have. It's called quarter struck on a nickel planchet. And quarters like you have sold at auction for $5,000. So no, we're not gonna throw you in the trash. We're going to sell you. Take him away. What? No! Cut. Sorry guys, I changed my mind. This ending is too sad. We gotta rewind this. So no, we're not gonna throw you in the trash. We're going to sell. Whoa, look, a distraction! Really? Where? Now the next 1965 quarter weighs 6.25 grams. That's because it's made of silver, 90% silver. However, some 1965 quarters were made with silver planchets, and that's why they weigh 6.25 grams. Because 1964 was the last year they made silver quarters. In 1965, they started making clad quarters, 25% nickel and 75% copper. And if you can find one of these quarters, it's really rare. And that's why they sell for $7,500. Depending on condition, of course. Obviously, if your coin isn't in the best condition, it lowers the value. But nevertheless, no matter how dirty it is, it's always worth something because it's made of silver. But you wouldn't believe it, but 1965 quarters have also been known to have been struck on dime planchets, as well as nickel planchets. Who would have guessed? But if you do find one, they have sold for over $1,500. The next 3 errors should weigh 5.67 grams because, don't worry, nothing's wrong with the planchet this time. But this one has an off-center strike, which sold at auction for $160. Now the next error is a double die obverse. And now these quarters have sold for $300 to $500. But this one, graded at an MS65, sold for $700. Now this last error is very similar to an off-center strike error. But because the whole design is technically visible, it counts as a broad struck error. So these 1965 quarters that were broad struck out of collar have sold for over $100. Now, this is not an error, but 1965 quarters with a high grade like MS68 or MS69 have sold for over $2,000.
Time for the question of the day. I think it's kind of hard to read these things.
Hey Phil. You know the 1965 silver quarter? Yeah, the planchet was made in 1964. Which means that even though it says 1965, it's technically a 1964 quarter. And we would have never known that unless the planchet was made out of silver. Which means that it can happen to any date. A 2005 quarter could really be a 2004 quarter. And we'll never know because all of the quarter planchets are made out of clad. So make sure you check your 1965 quarters for errors, and make sure you weigh them. But did you know that even though the 1965 quarters are basically the oldest quarter you can find in circulation, the 2009 quarters are even more rare than the 1965 quarters? That's why I recommend you watch this video right here, because the 2009 quarters are rarer than you think. Subscribe.